As he mentioned, I am Jack Ryan. So yes, I get a lot of garbage for that in the defense innovation space. I'll give you a little bit quick background about myself. So former Navy, coming out of the expeditionary warfare community. So I was 5 years on active duty. As I got out of active service, transitioned into government contracting. So started in energy infrastructure build-outs, which around the 2018 timeframe, Army Futures Command moved here to Austin. So, a lot of conversations started coming up about, helping small companies do business with the DoD for the first time. And people were like, hey, you speak tech, you speak military, and you speak government contracting. Would you mind start talking to some of these groups and help them learn a little bit more about it? So as I kind of went through this process, and as Army Futures Command, Capital Factory, building up this defense innovation space, was building up, and this became a hub for defense innovation. I was transitioning my business, and we were basically working with cyber-focused companies. I'll let Chase dive a little bit more into that, but I've been largely for the last few years working for in the cyber space, helping those companies. I've recently transitioned over to a defense innovation unit, which now I'll let him start with cybers, and I'll talk about kind of the commercial solution openings that I'm working with now, that I can talk about the other transactional authorities. Kind of what Paul mentioned, gave you a little brief overview. I'll talk a little bit more about that in those groups. So again, I'm Jack Ryan with Defense Innovation Unit, and I'm a program manager in the energy portfolio. Jason.
Well, who knows what AFWERX is? Couple hands. Anybody know what it stands for? It doesn't stand for anything. It's just AFWERX. It's just Air Force with words. So AFWERX has I think it's public knowledge, $1 billion budget annually, which will increase its attacks across the entire portfolio for research and development, and it's focused on cyber and CIDR. I want to caveat the conversation with cyber CIDR reauthorization is currently up and expires 30 September, and doesn't look great to be reauthorized before 30 September, depending on who you ask. So take this knowledge with a grain of salt that come 1 October, we may not be having this conversation anymore. It may be an authority by another name, or it may go away altogether. So non-dilutive capital sounds good, right? Everybody likes non-dilutive capital. So cyber phase 1, up to $75,000 this year for essentially a white paper, a proof of concept. Moving into cyber phase 2, up to $1.25 million. Now you're getting into prototyping in min viable product, TRL level 4 to 7-ish, and then going to phase 3. Now the key to phase 3 is commercial availability. So you're moving away from R&D dollars, 3,600 funds, research and development, into O&M and procurement dollars. Phase 3s are funded by anybody other than AFWERX and DIU for the most part. So that's when you come with your customer and their budget. For phase 1 and phase 2, I will pay for that through AFWERX. Happy to do that. The number one critical success factor for selection on cyber phase 1 and phase 2 is the merit of your tech, and the fact that it's written in a way that someone in the government can read it and understand what the tech is, what the novel research and development you are proposing to do is, and the military utility that will emanate from the successful research and development of your technology. Those are the principal factors. If, just a little peek behind the curtain, DIU is significantly different from the Air Force, but when we do technical evaluations, we have a bank of thousands of SMEs across the Air Force. And although your tech may be super riveting and novel and new and have military utility, you may get the one evaluator in the entire bank that it doesn't make sense to them, and then you will get knocked out. So keep that in mind. Critical to your success is capability to write a cogent and understandable capability statement. So again, phase 1, $75,000. Phase 2, up to $1.25 million. The key benefit for cyber is any company, once you get a phase 1, that first initial $75,000 contract, in perpetuity, you can have any number of contracts for any dollar amount forever, regardless of your size standard. So if you grow beyond the SBA size standard for small business, your rights to that technology and that sole source authority to procure your technology exist forever. I don't know what that looks like in 1 October if reauthorization doesn't come back, so keep that in mind.
It's probably going to look like DIU is going to get a lot more busy because we'll be probably getting a lot of the prototype, the commercial focused companies coming directly to us rather than going through the sitter process. So that, yeah, we're looking at that, watching it, and we'll see what happens.
So phase one, you don't need a partner. That's anybody, any technology, anyone can apply. We are the only service that is doing an open topic, which literally means any technology, period, dot, is a significant portion of our annual budget going to that through phase one and phase two. There's also specific topics. If you look at something like Space Force, they're focused this year on space debris remediation and removal. That is a topic that they have put out there. So again, open topic, any technology with military utility. For phase two, you do have to have someone sign a collaboration agreement with you. A DAF, Department of the Air Force, so includes Space Force and Air Force, customer end users sign on that document as a partner, an interested party in your technology. So that's essentially BD. That's still a partnership. Again, what I said in the previous conversation with R&D funds, those are partnerships. They are not customer relationships. There's no guarantee that anybody that signs your collaboration agreement, which can be literally anyone in the Air Force, is going to show up with funds, assuming your technology bears out and is successful. So keep that in mind for phase two. And then StratFi, TACFi, very quickly, strategic funds increase. So on the heels of getting a phase two, you can apply for TACFi up to $3 million in matching funds. You have to bring money to the table as well in match. Or StratFi, which is up to $30 million. So effectively, the government's going to get on a StratFi $60 million potentially in bang for our buck when you do a corporate raise on the back end of applying for a StratFi or a TACFi. So that's the key factor there is within the last 3 years, you have to have had a phase two in active performance. So that there's an entire website dedicated to that process. Again, all of these are contingent upon reauthorization happening. So I'll pause quickly. Any questions on SBIR, how it works, when it works? Yeah.
The open areas, is there a ratio of areas inside of there that are, get picked up the most, like infrastructure, vehicles, maintenance? I mean, what areas are hot?
Well, you saw the list of 14. My pushback on that is it's so vague, those titles, that we don't really drill down. Like, you can't take that list and say, I fit here, and go to an investor, and the investor goes, yeah, absolutely, I get that. So, no, we only have 3 years of historicals on it so far. I mean, in general, AI, ML, human performance, we let 2 contracts last year for $60 million for hypersonics. But it really, on the open topic side, it could literally be anything. It's all over the board. Wearables.
You get like 10,000 responses, I guess. Maybe subject matter experts give merit, and then someone else.
Without telling you what I'm not supposed to, there is a formula on the backside. There's a system, it's input, and that generates our one to end list. And then essentially when we run out of money is where we stop. So there is a merit evaluation and factors aligned to it.
And, each service is going to have their modernization priorities and their own things that they're going to be focused on, their own topics they're going to be putting out through SBIR. Whereas DIU is a DoD base, so we work with all the different agencies or different services. So what we're focused on is energy, AI, autonomy, human systems, cyber, and space. We're a little bit more broad. We work with all the different groups. So we're more focused on the stuff that's going to get used across the services.
Yeah, the benefit of the DIU model is you come through a topic with them with essentially a stakeholder or champion in a service somewhere, aligned and ready to go. Presumably there's budget building, there's a POM allocation, there's something that's going to come to fruition from that effort, assuming the technology bears out. That's not what I afford through AFWERX.
Yeah, as Paul mentioned kind of on that last panel, we have the customer, the problem, and the budget to deal with the companies coming in for prototyping. So typically we're looking at technologies. We'll put out something. So I'm in the energy portfolio. We'll put out a request for a particular energy source. So it could be battery, nuclear, the whole run of different energy products. But as we put that out, we'll keep it pretty broad in the scope, so we're not limiting, the submissions that we get. So as those submissions come in, we'll usually get anywhere from 20 to 50. We'll narrow that down, take all the different evaluations, bring in all the different research labs. So we bring in the technical experts from Army, Navy, Air Force. In my case, with energy, we'll bring in people from DOE, NREL, and they'll help us evaluate all these submissions. At that point, we'll narrow it down, get to about a group of 5. They'll come in and they'll pitch directly to us with their technologies. A lot of the time we'll get, because they're so, we keep them broad because we don't want to scare people away. That's that opportunity where they can come and really kind of say, hey, this is how it solves your problem directly. So we'll go from there, narrow it down to about 2 companies is typically what we look to bring into prototyping. We try to do this all within about 100 days. So it's, they put the solicitation out, lasts about 10 days up there. We bring it down within 60 to 90 days. We're down selecting those companies, and then when we have those final group of companies, it's about 12 to 24 months on average that we're bringing, this prototype to the services. But, it's going to be different for each portfolio. Like I work in energy and space. Those are going to be hardware intensive. So those are going to have probably longer durations on those prototyping. But, with software, it'll be probably in that 12 to 24 months.
And then for SBIR specifically, when you look at phase 2 or Stratified TACFI, in the collaboration agreement where you're working with a potential customer or end user, there's a paragraph in there that describes the transition plan. My recommendation is to take a very hard look at that paragraph and make sure it makes sense, and it specifically outlines in what year money will land to help transition your technology into operational use and rollout. What I have seen in the last 2 years is typically those paragraphs are very vague. Like, yeah, we're super excited. We'll definitely do a phase 3 if the technology bears out. No description of money, when it'll land. That's personality driven by who signs that document. So I'm pushing more contractors specifically that are getting phase 2 and Stratified TACFIs to take a real hard look at that paragraph and treat that like, it's not a legal document, but something you could go back to and say, hey, this was the plan, especially if someone PCSs or leaves or retires or anything like that. Yes, sir?
If you already have a prototype working, can you go straight for phase 2?
You can do it direct to phase 2, but there's still going to have to be novel R&D attached to it. So if your prototype is commercially focused and like Jorge described, but there's a military utility piece to it, you need to research that. Yeah, absolutely. Direct to phase 2 is an option. Yep.
And if you're in that kind of prototype, or if you actually have commercial applications, DOU, we want to hear about that. So we'll put out the topics that are focused, but if you have a solution that, we're not seeing the problem, but you can articulate what that direct problem is, send it over to us. We want to see this stuff because this is market research as we hear problems coming in the door from different services. If we see your information in there, we're like, okay, this problem's been introduced. We already know that this thing, we can actually, we can move forward because we know that's doing our market research for us. So if you have a question on a technology, you're in prototype, you have commercial customers, send that over to us.
So I was curious on the SBIR reauthorization, so like the August AFWERX call, is that funded or is that dependent upon getting?
No, anything before 30 September is funded. We're good there. What happens if any of those efforts have option years or anything like that? I don't know what that looks like after 30 September. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned if you had a technology or something that wasn't in your, what we would call an RFP, but list of needs, and you say bring it to you, what vehicle or what procedure do you use to do that?
You talking to me about?
Yeah, you had made a comment a moment ago that if you have something cool or something useful that we may not have thought of, we'd like to know about. So it's not in the list of the things that various services are looking for. What's the procedure or path, or how do we let you know?
Yeah, you can go right to the DIU website, or if you know kind of which, platform or portfolio it needs to be a part of, reach out to somebody in that portfolio technically like, hey, I've got this thing, I've never, it's a novel technology. It addresses probably future problems, or it's a, outstanding solution that nobody's ever thought of. Send it over to us. We'll take a look at it, and then we can go back to the different services and say, hey, is this thing gonna solve some future problem for you downrange, you can take a look at it like that. So just go to diu.mil. You can submit your stuff right there.
Anything else?
So for CSOs, normally it's like a pretty quick 4-page max solicitation for what we can submit. It's not clear if we should submit, like we're gonna pitch prototype, or we're gonna do a SIPR phase 1 equivalent. What's your recommendation there in terms of like what we put on the first 2 pages and rough order of magnitude? Should we put in, this is what it would cost to do a prototype, or what?
We'll get into the, sorry. We get into more of the rough order of magnitude if you're down selected off that first submission. So that'll come into us. For the technical merits, we'll look at it, we're like, hey, is this possible? Is this doable? And then we'll come back if you're selected for that technology, and we'll ask, in that pitch event that I mentioned, that live one, we'll actually do a breakdown of the rough order of magnitude of what you think it is from an estimate standpoint.
Yeah, and on the AFWERX SIPR side, we're not as easy as DIU for submission. The CSO is a solicitation. It has very strict guidelines on how much you can submit, when you can submit it, how you submit it. If you don't meet all those checkboxes, it will just be thrown out regardless of technological advancement or capability. So keep that in mind. Your number one goal is to make sure you check all the boxes for the solicitation on the AFWERX side. We do not do any evaluation on the technology if it doesn't meet the solicitation requirements. Yes, sir?
About how many phase 1s go through, get approved per year or something?
I think we award on average 800 phase 1s and 400 phase 2s a year. And then StratFi, TACFi, we had 165 submissions last year and 155 this year. So that's about it, our full budget there.
How many people here are from the Austin area or from out of town? How many from out of town? Okay, so DIU, we're home-based in Mountain View, California. We've got offices here in Austin, Boston, and DC, and now we just recently opened one in Chicago. So if you're from any of those areas or regions, reach out, connect with your local offices as well, get to know those folks. And so I'm brand new to DIU, literally less than a week over there. But if you have any questions or, as that gentleman mentioned, I may have something cool, reach out to me. I'm happy to be a pipeline to the rest of the community over there.
I guess my mic's off. About to come back on. But no, thank you, everybody. Thank you guys for being on stage.